Like, I know what lasers do in the movies, but what would a laser weapon do in reality if they could have one?
Well, there's no atmosphere in space, so you lose less energy. But now with you would need maybe a multi-megawatt laser. Right now we're on the cusp of maybe a 300 kilowatt laser. The Chinese are selling 30 and maybe 50, maybe even 100 kilowatt lasers. But a 30 kilowatt laser on Earth can penetrate layers of steel at about a kilometer. But in space, a laser can also damage with its high light and energy. It can damage optical surveillance systems, basically, destroy them without putting a hole in the satellite. But when you get to 300 megawatt, when you're 300 kilowatts, or even a megawatt, then you're talking about the ability to actually punch a hole in the metal, provided you can get close enough. And the more powerful the laser, the less the requirement to achieve that proximity. Right now, both the United States, Russia, and China have satellites that can intercept co-orbitally, meaning they can go right up to the side of a target satellite, and they have arms that can grab the target satellite. If it's your satellite, then you'd want to be able to do that to repair it, maybe refuel it. But if it's the enemy satellite, all you have to do is grab it and then toss it out of orbit, and it's basically a mission kill. The satellite can no longer perform its function.
Well, so we've kind of covered what China's plans are for low Earth orbit. From being able to create debris fields to setting up their own space stations. Beyond that, then, is the moon. China has already been sending a lot of rovers to the moon, one in 2013, one in 2019, 2020. They have plans for 2030. How is China going to use the moon?
Well, the example of the radar station is something that they've been thinking about, at least for quite a while. I would estimate that project is at least 20 years old. When the project reaches a point where it's mentioned in a major journal article, that means it's advanced quite a bit, at least within the theoretical stage, and it's on the cusp of being funded by the PLA. So by 2029, China will begin sending people to the moon. The people will meet a number of unmanned moon systems that have radar, have optical surveillance systems, and a lot of other different systems to perform basic exploration, determine what's in the moon soil, look for lunar ice. China will have a moon hopper, kind of a sub-satellite for the moon that will take off from the landing site, travel 30, 40 kilometers, and then land in the dark shadow of a moon crater, where a lot of this lunar ice is suspected of residing. If they can find the lunar ice, then they can begin to process oxygen and maybe even rocket fuels. And that is a goal in order to enable travel back to the Earth or travel to Mars. But this all could become obsolete if nuclear powered space travel is perfected in the next few years.
For our listeners who aren't familiar with the sort of water to fuel theory, so water can be H2O, can be divided into H2 and O2 essentially. You'd have to power that electrolysis somehow, but you basically get hydrogen for fuel and oxygen for breathing, and also for essentially feeding fuel, right? So all you basically need is water and energy, and you can have this, right?
Yes. Both the United States and China are working on small nuclear power plants for the moon. So that would be the source of enough power. But fashioning a factory is the next step, and the factory would basically receive the regolith carried by some kind of earth mover, a regolith mover. It would go to the crater, bring the regolith back to the factory. The factory, powered by the nuclear power plant, would then process the regolith, separate out the ice, and then turn the ice into, yes, O2 and H2. The H2 could be a fuel almost immediately. And you combine that with the oxygen, liquid oxygen, and you have a fuel cycle to achieve wherever, or to get wherever you need to go. But the oxygen is also very necessary to sustain life on, workers on the moon as well.
The moon is a harsh mistress.
Is there anything to kind of prevent the Chinese Communist Party from basically colonizing the moon? You're describing it as.
Well, it would require our violating our own principles. I mean, since the mid 1960s, the United States, the Europeans have been leading a diplomatic effort in the United Nations and other places. The 67 Moon Treaty, Outer Space Treaty, and then a kind of non-binding Moon Treaty have tried to create a set of principles that nations that go to the moon should strive to follow. Transparency, no violence, no weapons, things like that. All of which was repeated in the Trump administration's Artemis Accord that has been signed onto by really the leading non-dictatorship spacefaring countries. So we've gone the distance to try to create the political basis for avoiding conflict and war on the moon. Now, China will say, and has said, of course, we agree with all of this. But oh yeah, don't look at this radar on the moon that's essentially part of our Earth Moon system control apparatus. And also, don't make any fuss when we start bombing the moon in the course of going to the moon.